Welcome everybody. My name is Matt Williams. I'm excited to get into some of this unmalted and unique grains. It's kind of uncharted territories. I just sat through the last presentation in this room on sours, and I heard that over and over. You know, it's uncharted, it's new stuff, and some of the stuff I'll talk about today is new stuff. So if you guys got comments afterwards, I'll be learning from you guys if you've been playing around with some of the unique grains as well. But yeah, I'm here to kind of hopefully make you more comfortable with the topic of using ancient grains and unique grains. But again, it's new to a lot of folks, but we'll dive into it. So again, I appreciate you coming, and I know this conference, they do a really good job. I came last year with a different company, but really enjoyed myself, and Nashville's obviously a great town to hang out in, so can't beat Nashville. So let's get started. These are some of my friends, especially this guy. So like I said, we're going to talk about how to use unique, unmalted, and ancient grains. Again, my name is Matt Williams. Our focus today is going to be, we're going to talk about trendy styles and where we can kind of fit some of these unique grains in right away. And then we'll talk about field beers, kind of a new concept, but a term that we're starting to hear out in the industry, and we want to share that insight with you guys. Usage, we'll talk about individual unique grains and talk about the usage, the flavor, and then at the end we'll talk a little bit about cost and how you can save some money moving forward. So one thing I did want to know, if you don't mind, want to know kind of who's out here as far as job titles. If you don't mind raising your hand, if you're if I call your job title, if you're a brewer or a buyer or ingredient buyer, you mind raising your hand? Cool. If you're in sales or tap room, and if you're just strictly an owner, cool. We're trying to talk bad about you guys.
Well, I do everything, so.
All right. So my bio, just so hopefully there's a little bit of street cred. Obviously, you can challenge anything I have to say today, but hopefully you see that there's again some street cred. Was a professional brewer for 8 or 9 years in the brew pub setting, and in the macro. I cut my teeth up in Wisconsin in the brew pub scene, and learned quite a bit there. A guy named Rich Becker kind of took me under his wing. He brewed up in Madison, Wisconsin, and he was a UC Davis guy. Learned a ton from him. His wife was actually in enology, which is really cool. So I'd go eat dinner at their house, and you know, she'd be talking about wine, and he'd be talking about beer, and just about went crazy. But I certainly learned a lot from them, which was really cool. Then did craft beer sales for Left Hand Brewing out of Colorado. So you salespeople have been there. I know how tough it is sometimes to sell unique stuff or beers in general. And then spent some time in the wine industry, 4 years, and then most recently over on the malt side, which is really cool because it allowed me to get closer to the brewer. You know, I've got put on too much weight over the years. I don't want to brew beer, but I definitely enjoy talking to brewers and being a part of that culture, as I should. So those positions with Cargill Malt, so the big guys who kind of have that perspective, and then more recently with the smaller company Payload Supply, which I'm currently doing, and they're certainly new to the industry, and we're on the smaller side. So kind of. Hopefully my insight comes from both of those, and I can help you out a little bit. So let's get into it right away. the New England style IPA. I'd love to hear, some of this didn't transfer over. Anyway, New England IPA, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I don't want to cause a fight in the crowd, but who here, show of hands, thinks that's a really cool style? You drink it, it's fun. Anybody? Yeah. Most people. Who thinks it's like total bullshit? A couple guys, right? So, regardless of where you stand on that, I think the consumers, it's what they're asking for, right? So as brewers, it's up to us to give them stuff that they want, right? So I basically listed, again, some of these numbers got all out of whack going from Google over to PowerPoint, but I'm sure you can figure it out. But base malt, 80% pills, or two-row, whatever your comfort level is on either one of those grains or those malts. A little bit of Vienna for a little pop of orange. 10%, 10 to 15% oats. I think that's a pretty kind of standard recipe for this style. And then, of course, the hop side, 3 to 5 pounds per barrel. I've seen it as much as 6 or 7. I don't know, has anybody made one with more than 5 or 6 pounds per barrel? Not yet, yeah. I'm sure they're out there. But the key, I think, to this style is we have a really cool opportunity to, because the beer already has a nice haze to it, we have an opportunity to add some of these really cool, unique ingredients. And it's just a fun place to start. So kind of broke these into 2 categories, right? Some story-driven additions, and then some cost savings additions. You could kind of go either way, but on the story-driven side, using some raw red wheat, some triticale or spelt. We'll talk more about those grains individually and kind of their what they offer. But those are just a few that come to mind that absolutely make sense just to sneak those in at a 5 or 10% rate and see where you're at, right? Make sure the flavor is there, make sure it tastes good. And then you can kind of create the story behind it once you know this tastes good. So the reason why these are story-driven additions is because, spelt, if it's raw spelt, it's somewhat inexpensive, or triticale, but the reason why, if they're malted, then you're going to pay more for it. You're going to pay, $1 a pound, or you're going to pay the full price for a malted, unique grain. So those tend to be, which, $1 a pound for something is nothing if you create this awesome story. So it's really not a big deal, but you just want to keep in mind cost. And we'll kind of talk about cost throughout the presentation. We'll kind of go in and out. But these are absolutely a cost savings. If you're going to use raw oats or raw white wheat to take the place of some malted products, some malted wheat or malted oats. And again, we'll talk some cost difference down the road. But the function of these ingredients, the wheat and the oats, are to give you texture and structure and fluffiness and mouthfeel. And those things don't change if it's unmalted. So you still get that benefit. And look how much money you're spending on this right here, on these hops. So why not find a little way to kind of pull some of that money back? And that's your opportunity to use a little bit of raw stuff, especially in this style specifically. Next style, sours and farmhouse beers. Obviously those are 2 different styles, but recipe-wise, they're kind of in that same ballpark. 1/3 pale, 1/3 pilsner, 1/3 wheat. Again, just kind of a stripped down, easy malt bill, but that's kind of what you're seeing out there. Because on a lot of these, obviously on the sour side, the lacto or Brett is really doing the heavy lifting, and that's where you're getting a lot of your unique character from. So your grain bill doesn't have to be overly complex. And then on the farmhouse side, similar, the yeast is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. where you're getting that kind of, you can get that, kind of doughy, you can get, the mineral eggshell, and all kinds of really cool characters from the yeast. So again, kind of the same thing as the New England IPA. You got a chance to really sneak some of this stuff in, really without anybody knowing, to start. And then, again, you get a chance to kind of build that story. We'll talk more about the story and why that's important in a little bit. But I just wanted to show you, two really trendy styles. New England IPA, sours, farmhouse beers. I wanted you to see, some of the more popular beers in the market right now, and how easy it is to kind of sneak some of these raw ingredients and unique ingredients in. So one of the kind of bigger concepts that we're talking about today is field beers, and I'll just read it. What is a field beer? It's an ingredient-driven beer that connects the farmer and the customer. Spending time in the wine industry did an amazing job. Again, it's a much older industry, but they did such a good job of connecting the farmer and the customer. And you buy wine books, and it's just littered with stories about the farmer and the farmer's dog, and how their family, it's 4 or 5 generations of winemakers and growers that are making these products, which is really cool. In the beer industry, again, it's young. I'm not pointing any fingers, but historically it's done kind of a poor job, really, of calling attention to the raw ingredients and the farmers that make these ingredients. So that's where this comes in. That's where the field beer comes in. And similar to terroir, which the wine industry uses an awful lot. We use it too. But I don't know if you've been on tours or you've given tours and you say terroir, and half the crowd has no idea what you're talking about. The other half might, if they're wine people, but you kind of have to explain yourself. So what we're hearing in the market, and something we want to share is the word field. It's really important. One, it's more tangible for our customers. And it really is a special place. I'll just read it, but it's a specific spot where soil, climate, and environment impact the growth of our ingredients. And that's not just some magical statement. It just really just calls attention to where the ingredients are coming from, and it's so important. And it really is, a special place for customers. If they can discover where things come from, they're more interactive. They're more likely to tell somebody else about it. It can be really cool. So kind of the next natural question would be, how to sell a field beer. Some of the sales guys in here, it's similar to selling, your other beers, in the fact that you need something bite-sized, right? You need something that a consumer can grab onto, a key word or two. And of course, find a good name, right? Easier said than done. But when you're talking about an ingredient-driven beer, being able to attach an ingredient or a farmer to a name really goes a long way. How many times we'd all love to talk to all our customers, right? Sometimes. Of course, we became brewers to not talk to anybody really, but the goal is to talk to customers, right? And share your story and share the story of the beer. But you don't always get a chance to talk to them. You're busy. Hopefully your tap rooms are busy. But if you can kind of share that story in the name, it goes a long way. So be creative and think about that when you're designing some of these field beers. So who is buying unique grains? It's an easy answer. A lot of people. You go to Whole Foods and you get to see all the stuff on the shelf that's geared towards these ancient grains or unique grains. So our customers are already buying it. They're not used to drinking it, which is where we come in. But up until this point, They are absolutely used to seeing these names already. They're asking for it. You know, all the great foodie spots in Nashville and Atlanta, wherever you live, they've been serving us quinoa now for a few years. So now it's you know, we're getting to the point where customers are going to say, or when you do a quinoa beer eventually, or something like that, they're going to go, oh, cool, yeah, I've had that before. So there's going to be that comfortable, you know, attitude from the customer, which is really important. But yeah, I've not seen these, but I haven't been to Whole Foods in a few months. But look, organic, ancient grain pretzels, right? Who's the little buddy of beer? The pretzel guy, right? So that's kind of cool to see. Obviously, we've seen these quinoa oats, the cereal aisles littered with unique grains, and the flour industry, people making breads with all kinds of unique ingredients. So it's out there, and you guys know that because you guys are in this world. But sometimes you have to convince somebody else, you know, your owner or your boss, whoever, like, hey, let's try this out. Well, you know, if they get in the way, they're going to say, who's going to buy that? Well, customers are already buying this stuff. They're just not used to in a beverage. So how to start a field beer program, and really, you know, field beer program, that might be maybe too much to start, but the idea is, how do I get comfortable with it? How do I start playing around? How do I start building some beers that are unique? And the first question you have to ask is, you know, where do I find unique ingredients? And the answer is, well, for me personally, I can help you with that, of course, but the industry is, you know, the big guys are working on some of this stuff, so it's coming. But the first thing you got to do, like you said, to start a program is find unique ingredients. If you got a buddy whose dad or uncle is a farmer, go talk to him. Reach out to the guys who pick up your spent grain. Ask them, you know, what are they doing? Maybe they're foraging. Maybe you want to do a forage beer. I know the guy, I don't know them personally, but the Flora, was it Flora and Fauna guys up in Fauna Flora in North Carolina, they do a great job with foraging and adding really cool, unique stuff. So next step, design a style that shows off unique character. You could really do it two ways. You could find an existing beer, like we said, New England IPA, a sour farmhouse beer, and slide a little bit in and kind of see what happens. See if you like the flavor, see if you like the texture, add. Or you go all in and you design a beer that's very, very story driven and very unique driven, and you test it out that way. So there's two options. And again, visit Whole Foods. I hate to advertise for Whole Foods, but there's a lot of great ideas when you walk into that store. They do a really good job of placement, and they have a lot of really cool products. Frank, to be honest, I recommend something I used to do. I haven't done it in a while. I need to, but is go to Whole Foods and take some of your taproom people, take some of your salespeople, go in there as a brewer, tell your boss you're taking the afternoon off, or you're doing something cool, field trip. Go to Whole Foods, walk around with 2 or 3 people or by yourself, and recalibrate your palate. It's a great way to just walk in there, go around, scratch the oranges, go. You can't eat anything unless you're going to buy it, obviously, but go around, walk around, smell everything. You can open all the different kinds of nuts. You can kind of smell through the bag. You can walk in the cereal aisle. I mean, all these things. It's just all these great aromas all around you, and it's just a fun, free way to calibrate your palate. And it's important to do every 6 months, every year. It just helps you get reacquainted with certain aromas and certain flavors. So, just my own little personal ad there, but something fun to do. So the other part of of building a field beer program. Partner with a farmer, like I said. Find some people that you already work with, and focus on what they're doing, or find out what they're doing, and see if you can incorporate that into what you're doing. We already talked about this, but add the farmer ingredient to the beer name. I think that's really important. We live in a millennial world, if you will, but share pictures, right? When I worked at Left Hand Brewing, the picture that got the most comments and likes was the one with the beer at the field with the sunset, right? Like that combination is gold, right, for the social media people. So think about that when you're big picture, thinking about partnering up with a farmer. Think about the photo opportunities, and then create a story, right? Tell a story. Go visit the farm. Go get some ammo that you can use, that you can share with your customers. Because what you're trying to do is really connect the dots for the customer. Again, when you go to these markets and they meet the farmer, the person that's growing the tomatoes, like that's connecting the dots for those customers. So you need to do that as well. You need to share that story with the customers. And then, the most seasonal beer you can get, play that up. It's, what's that food? The ramps, right? They're in season like 3 weeks at good restaurants. That's on the menu, man. They beat you up with ramps for about 3 weeks, and they're awesome. But think about that. Tell them that, these dandelions, they only grow for 3 weeks of the year, or whatever it is. Let them know how hard it is to make this really cool field beer with unique grains or ancient grains or whatever the story it is. So don't be afraid to say how hard something is. This is where I recommend doing this, starting some farmer profiles. This actually is my cousin up in Wisconsin. I think he's a little crazy for standing on top of that, especially because he's got 2 little boys. I wouldn't do it, but I'm a chicken. But yeah, this is my cousin Dan up in Wisconsin, New Glarus. That's a bunch of wheat that he was harvesting about 3 weeks ago. So real fresh picture. And I guess that's all his buddies. I don't know. But anyway, start a farmer profile. Again, talk to the guy who's picking up your spent grain. Find out what his buddies are doing. Just start logging, especially if you're not ready to really dive into making a unique beer with these ingredients. At least start with a farmer profile. That way, when you think you are ready, you have some contacts and people to reach out to. Because what you can do is, like right here, it says available for malting. This is all raw stuff, and we'll talk more about raw stuff and how easy it is to use raw stuff. But if you're not quite sure about using raw stuff, contact your local craft maltster. And most of the times they'd be happy to malt something for you. Like I said, you got a connection or a buddy that's doing amaranth, and you're like, well, I got grain, but I need to malt it. Contact some of these local maltsters and see what they'll do for you. I've talked to a bunch of them. They'll malt stuff for you. It might cost a little bit, but again, for 2-3 bags of something, 5 bags of something, a pallet of something, it's not a big deal. Especially if the end story is really cool. But one thing I want to point out is my cousin said he's got this cool varietal called a Zaria, and he said it's an old Russian wheat, which is pretty cool. So that'd be kind of fun to play around with. So now we'll kind of dive into a little more specifics on certain grains. This is unique grains. So really, I don't really have a title for it. I just wrote non-traditional brewing ingredients. Because really that's what it is. I mean, we've been, our world has been using unique grains. Other parts of the world use unique grains exclusively. We don't in America, but but it's because we're learning more about it, and we will start using it more. It's just more about comfort level from the customers, from the end user. So Triticale, it's a cross between rye, wheat, and has a unique earthiness to it. So that's kind of a cool grain. I had a Triticale recently. I was in anyway, it was a Triticale wheat. It was decent. I think they used about 50%, which to me is a little high, especially on something that's very unique like Triticale. I think something around the 20% mark would be probably a little more appropriate. Maybe 20% Triticale, maybe 10 to 15% malted wheat or unmalted wheat would be enough to give you that uniqueness that you're looking for. I think it went the other way and it was almost too earthy. But red wheat, which again, we see red wheat. You can buy it from Country Malt or BSG or some of the big guys, but it's a really cool, underused grain in my opinion. It's got that really nice kind of sweeter fruit note, which is really cool. A lot of times people use it in wits, which we know the story on wits, right? It's kind of a yeast dominant beer, so you really don't end up getting a lot of that sweeter fruit. But if you use red wheat on some other, the farmhouse or the sours, or even just something like a, kind of a lighter dunkel or something, just something where you can see a little bit of those fruit notes come through. I think you got a lot of potential there. It also has a little bit lower protein if that's what you're looking for. Wild rice, another really cool item. It offers a rustic, earthy character. We were talking about a little bit earlier, one of the guys in the room here, and he just thought, it'd be cool. You get some really funky colors that come out of that wild rice, which is really cool. So it'd be something fun to play with. So specifically, Triticale. Anybody ever use Triticale?
I know Tribbles like it.
What? I'm sorry?
Tribbles like it.
Tribble is like Triticale? I don't know Tribble.
If you ever watch Star Trek,
Oh, sorry.
Tribbles,
Yeah.
they ate Quadro Triticale.
Oh, got it.
Of course, there makes a Triticale this year ahead at some point.
Yeah.
Cool.
Nerd.
Sorry. So anyway, flavor-wise on Triticale, you get this really nice kind of loamy, because it's kind of in between rye and wheat. You do get a little bit of that dryness, that little dry sensation on your palate, which is really cool. You can be, just like rye, you can overuse it. It can be too dry. It can be, there's too much tannin on your palate. But anyway, you get that really cool kind of loaminess, and that, to me, that lends itself obviously to wheats and farmhouse, and you'll see those two styles just about on all these because they're just easy beers to one, experiment with, but two, to also add some really unique stuff because you're already drinking a unique character beer. But obviously all the rye styles, anything you're currently using rye in, you could easily sub in a little Triticale and see where that goes. IPA might be pushing it a little bit, but as far as like traditional IPA, but maybe not. You get that. It's normal to put a little bit of rye in an IPA, so you get that kind of dry finish. I think you have to be careful not to get too earthy and too loamy, too dirty. But I think it's an opportunity to put some of that. I got 20% usage just because on a few of these, I'm very conservative on usage because the goal is to make good beer, right? It doesn't do anybody good if you use 50% of this and the beer sucks. And so then consumers are afraid of drinking a beer with Triticale. So I don't want that. I don't think anybody wants that. So my theory is, use it. If you need to use a little more, do it. But in the beginning, be conservative and just make sure the beer's balanced. And then cost, Triticale, again, you don't see it a lot, but malted Triticale is, right around $1 or a little over $1. Red wheat, again, we just talked about that a little bit, but easy for wheats, farmhouse, easy in a New England IPA, wheat wine. I know those were popular maybe, I don't know, 3 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, maybe even longer. But I still see people making those, and they are good if they're done right. But naturally, that little fruit character showing up in a wheat wine would be super easy. You get a little bit of that rustic character, and you get, again, it is a wheat, so you get that nice kind of fluffy structure, which is cool. Usage is up a little higher, about 30%, no problem. One of the cool differences, and I'll point out some more differences on cost, but malted versus raw, we're talking about 20 cents. So, if you had a beer that was heavy wheat and you wanted to sub in, a bunch of red wheat, you're looking at some pretty good savings down the road. Wild rice, we touched on it before, but really earthy, kind of rustic component. The stuff that I feel more comfortable using is the puff stuff. It's really expensive, but you don't need a ton of it. And I like to keep the usage really low, 10%. I had a buddy up in Wisconsin that made the absolute most beautiful wild rice beer, probably to date. I mean, I've only tasted maybe 10 of them, so it's not like I've tasted a bunch of them, but it was absolutely gorgeous, and it was kind of in that, in this world. It was like, mild to amber, had that really nice rustic, almost, a little bit of a mushroom component to it. It was an ale, so again, closer to amber. But you got some cool styles in there. So some native ales that you can play around with. Obviously Bach, when you get in that really pretty like garnet Bach color, that's a great opportunity to use something like wild rice. So let's keep moving on unmalted grain. This to me is very specific to some cost savings. You'll see some pretty dramatic pricing on here. But the definition right now of unmalted grain for brewers is just raw grains that are cleaned and ready for brewing. When you look at like a spec sheet for raw grain, there's not much to it. You're looking at like moisture. Some will give you a sugar load. You're looking at what's the other one on there? I'll get to it further on. But you're not seeing very much. It's not like a spec sheet when you get something malted. Let's talk about malted for a second. When you malt something, you are adding more complexity to the grain. Raw is very simple. It's a very simple flavor, but you still get the texture component, especially from the wheat side, and you get the mouthfeel, you get the head retention, you get the tools that we give you, regardless of whether you're raw or malted. So just keep that in mind. Like for instance, I read this, like the gap between unmalted barley and malted barley is huge. But the gap between malted wheat and unmalted wheat, very slim. So just keep that in mind. White wheat, obviously used for head retention, fluffy mouthfeel. On the oat side, texture, it's a texture add. You get that little cereal component. On the rye, it's used for complexity and dry finish, which is a lot of that stuff you guys know, of course. But so white wheat specifically, whoops, sorry. Usage, 30%. I mean, you could go up to a little higher than that, even on raw. The distilling industry historically has used unmalted stuff for a long time. They have liquid enzymes. So they've seen the benefit, the cost benefit for a very long time. And you still get, again, like I said, you still get the structure part of it. You still get, if you taste a distilled product made from all wheat, You still get the fluffiness, you still get the texture add, which is really cool. So flavor, like we said, round, fluffy, soft, naturally wheat, farmhouse, sours, session beers. Cost, again, you're looking at like a 20-cent savings. We're working with some of the kind of bigger regional guys right now, and they're having a lot of success subbing out some of the unmalted stuff. Or excuse me, they're subbing out malted or unmalted for malted. Got that backwards. They're subbing out malted for unmalted, and they're saving 20 cents a pound, which if you're doing a lot of volume, that's a ton of money, which is really cool. So and again, we'll talk about cost structure and all that in a little bit. Oats, same thing. Easy add to New England IPA, like we said. Some Christmas styles or those kind of heavier winter beers. Of course, wheat, farmhouse, all the things you normally put oats in. Because again, you still get that cereal, fluffy, round component. Look at the cost difference on this though. This is major, right? Malted, you're looking at 80 cents plus a pound. I mean, you can see it as high as $1 a pound for malted oats. But raw, really good price. So just keep that in mind when you're subbing things. And I don't think anybody, at least not me, I don't expect you guys to go back to your breweries and overhaul all this for raw. But especially when you're designing new beers, just keep that in mind. There's no harm in designing a new beer that's also cost effective, right? Your buyers out there, that's like, it's a dream, right? Like, oh, we're gonna do this new beer, oh, and it costs less. Wow, that's awesome. So take that to your boss, right? Take that to your boss, right? So it's important though to share that story with people that pay the bill. Rye, I would say, to me, rye is maybe a little more like barley, where the gap's a little bit wider between unmalted and malted. Rye really benefits from being malted. You just get that a little more complexity component, and you get that really nice spice, and you get kind of that pie crust character, and you get that really dry finish, which is really cool. Again, the distillers, they use a ton of unmalted rye, but on the brewing side, a little bit different. You can still sneak it in there, in my opinion. You just may not get as much of the complexity out of it being unmalted, but it's absolutely, still a 20-cent deal, and it's still a nice little value add. You can still get the white pepper and dry finish and a little bit of spice. You just need to use it at a higher usage to get. My rule of thumb is it's probably, if you were using 10% rye, malted rye, you would easily need, 20 to 25% unmalted, just to kind of get that rye flavor back. Forget about the sugar part. You're not getting the sugar part out of it, but actual complexity from the rye, you're going to need to add more. Ancient grains, I think that's kind of what some of you guys specifically came here for, I think. But this is really cool. So the company I work for, they are one of them that I work for. They purchased a company up in Michigan who really has the market share on all the ancient grains, which is really cool. And it just happened a few months ago, so it's still new. So they're kind of, for me anyway, these ancient grains are starting to just trickle out for me, and they're becoming more available. Somebody asked for quinoa earlier, and I don't personally have that available right this minute, but it's coming is the answer I'm getting. So some of these really unique stuff in ancient grains are coming, but for now, this is kind of what we got. So ancient grains, right? Old, absolutely forgotten grains, at least in North America. But they come from, the story is they come from the grass family, right? So they're kind of like the throwaway grains, if you will, unfortunately, at least in America. But spelt, heavy hitter, in the wheat family, even higher protein, if you're looking for a higher protein ingredient. Buckwheat, naturally gluten-free, behaves like a grain as soon as you heat it up. Amaranth, dense, gluten-free, real crunchy. I haven't had a beer personally with amaranth. I think that's the only one up here that I haven't. But I know it's out there. People are working on it. So you can be the first. So spelt, you can use, pretty high usage on spelt, 30%. You get this really nice kind of nutty bread, almost, baker's, real kind of almost crunchy bread character, which is really cool. Obviously that lends itself to wheats, farmhouse, a bock, same thing, especially one with some color, and a spelt wine. Talked to a few guys recently that are working on spelt wines for some of their anniversary parties. So just something unique and different, and something that would be fun to share with customers. Pricing, malted, over a buck, obviously, raw, just under. Not a huge cost savings, but definitely spelt. It's a name that people, it grabs attention for certainly because it's different and it's new to people. Buckwheat, another cool one. I've seen some buckwheats in. I used to make a gluten-free beer, and we use buckwheat. So I've seen it on that side a little bit, but again, we're going to start seeing it even more and more. And I think the main reason is because it's got a really cool flavor. It's got earthy. It even gives you that really like soft little coffee flavor, which is really sweet. Or not sweet, but cool. Sorry. I talked to the guys that were doing the last presentation, the sour guys, and they've been playing around with some buckwheat in some of their longer aging sours, because you get that complexity on the back end. Again, you get a little bit of that coffee, nice kind of earthy, barnyardy note, which you're going to get anyways if you're going to do long sours, but it just kind of adds to it. So you can look at it two ways. It can be a story driven, this is what we're doing and we're trying to do this, or we're adding something cool in here and it turned out really cool. So there's kind of a couple ways to approach. Cost, in the 75-cent range. Nothing too crazy. Amaranth. Again, I haven't had a beer with it, but I've talked to some farmers and I've talked to some people that are working on this specifically. Really cool flavor profile, peppery, nutty. I think that would do well in some of those farmhouse beers. On the wit side, you get a little bit of that pepper component, which would be cool without adding pepper. And then you get that little bit of nuttiness too, which is really cool. Price, again, between raw and malted. No one's really doing it, so the pricing is the pricing, It's not necessarily a savings thing, but it's again more of a story driven. So here's a few other grains that we didn't talk about, and there's a laundry list of grains out there that will start to show up, but here's just a few. The einkorn, the emmer, quinoa, and millet. Anybody got any others that you can think of? I mean, they're out there. I didn't capture them all, of course, but so I'm sure this is some of you brewers who probably are thinking, well, how come we haven't been doing this before? Well, there's been concerns, right? Like milling, that's something I continuously get when I go talk to customers is when I put torrefied in there, it's like the mill is like, loud and crazy and well, what's going on there? And it's an absolute concern. But the way around that is two ways. You can add any of these unique grains, again, if the sizing matches up with what you're currently doing, into your mill, and just blend it with your base malt. Get 2 or 3 bags in and blend it. So you're taking it easy on your mill, because nobody wants a messed up mill, right? At the cost of a unique beer. We want unique beer and cool stories, but we don't want to ruin anything. So keep that in mind. Or request it pre-milled, and then you can just dump it in and stir it in. So those are 2 ways around the milling. We have a great customer, and they're very open about using unmalted stuff and unique grains up in Michigan. Vivant, really good farmhouse brewery up there. And they, again, they're very open about using cool and unique product. But they've saved, 20 grand using unmalted raw white wheat in their farmhouse beers. So you can do it, and you can save a ton of money. Another concern, ABV, right? It's not malted, a lot of these grains. You can get them malted, cost more, but you can also use them unmalted. And you lose, and you'll lose some sugar, you'll lose ABV, but I'm a firm believer that the craft beer industry in general is making too high of alcohol products. So just my personal opinion. I drive around a lot. I go from brewery to brewery. I appreciate when something's not 6.9 instead it's 6.4. That little bit is actually a value to me personally. But I think it's more of a bigger picture thing, and it's a safety issue, and I'm comfortable saying the industry typically makes beers that are probably higher than they need to be. So take that for whatever it's worth. But I do believe that. Using unmalted stuff, cutting something back a half a point, is that a big deal? I don't think it is. You got to make that decision yourself. But if it's cost savings and you're being safer, I think that's a win. The other thing is flavor. So, like I said before, you don't get quite as much flavor on unmalted stuff, but, I used the analogy before where, barley, it's way different when you malt and unmalted. But some of these other ingredients that you're using as you're pulling out of your toolbox, and you're looking for structure and fluffiness and mouthfeel and head retention, those things all are still there. So just keep that in mind. And then you got the opportunity to share some new flavors with people. I've had some brewers already say that they like putting some raw stuff in some of the sours down the road, because it just gives the yeast a little more to chew on later down, which creates, we all know, the longer the yeast is in action, we get some more complex flavors out of it, which is cool. So you may see another tick or two post barrel. Obviously, we don't want anything into the package side, but post barrel, nothing wrong with that. A little more complexity coming out of the barrel. So here's a really cool one. Cost savings, right, on the malted versus the unmalted. So this is where a little more specific on pricing. Malted wheat, you typically see it out in the market for 58 cents per pound, somewhere in that, for bags, somewhere in that ballpark. But unmalted, 38, right? So we're looking at a nice 20-cent difference. So based on 25,000 pounds of wheat usage per year, that's a savings of $5 grand. So in 25,000 pounds, depends on how big you are, but we're talking about 12 pallets, so it's over the course of a year. Not a huge deal. So if you already do that and you think, or maybe you do 50,000 pounds a week currently, and maybe I'll try subbing in 25,000 pounds for the year of unmalted, and look at the savings, $5,000. Very nice. So 2 examples. One, the farmhouse guys, the guys from Vivant, and they are nice enough. You know, again, they're really proud of using unmalted stuff, and they feel like they found something really cool. So they're very proud and to share that story. So if anybody needs to reach out to some of the guys that are currently using this stuff, you can easily send me an email, and I can link you guys up. And part of what I do is we source things. So if there's something that we didn't cover and you want to find it, you can send me an email, and we'll do some sourcing and do some looking around, digging around for you. Be happy to do that. And then example 2, I have a customer that uses, they just started about 2 or 3 months ago, so they're not quite as open as the guy in Michigan, but they already projected that they're going to save in the next 6 months about $15,000, and just by going from malted oats to unmalted, which is really cool savings. And again, that's in a style that you can hide those things a little bit and save some money. So yeah, that's it. I'll let you get to the drinking party. But I have my emails up here. I have some cards up here if you want to take them. The other thing is I'm going to do some cool glasses. We've already sent it off actually, but they say field beer on the side, which is kind of cool. A little wood grain, giveaway glasses. But if you're interested, if you want to drop your card off, I'll send you a pair in the mail, or a couple pair. Just tell me how many people that would appreciate that. So.
Cool. Question?
Yeah.
Any specific ways on your mashing these grains?
No, that's the cool thing about the mash part. As long as they're being milled properly, and that's something you're going to keep a close eye on. Mash temperatures are the same.
As long as you have enzymes from the regular grain, right?
Yeah. See, I think that's the big difference. Is you're not using these because you have to get the sugar load out of it. You're using these because you're trying to get the structure part of them, which is the mouthfeel, head retention, and the fluffiness. You're using it because you want that, not because you need the sugar. So I think that's the big, and I think that's been the issue this whole time, is everybody's thinking, oh, I'm not using that because I need the sugar. Well, again, do you really need the sugar? I mean, so, yeah. Cool. Thank you, appreciate it.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.